this morning we have a business expert, Ogu Loveday, and of course a public affairs analyst. We're going to be looking at ways that we can, improve the economy and maybe stabilize some of the recent trajectory that we've seen that, implies that the economy is on the right way to become a better one. Then alongside with the fact that this 2025, we understand that there's going to be the Youth National Confab, which the President has promised the youth, that all this restiveness about the youth and, issues and all that, that the youth should come together and see how they can harness their potentials and their God-given innate. Because whether you like it or not, we're talking about the economy now. The youth also have a major role to play in improving Nigeria's economy. Mr. Ogu, you're welcome to the program this morning on ITV.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too.
Yeah.
All right, let's start from the youths now, because that seems to be our first port of call. Talking about the youths, how they can really contribute their quota in, improving the economy and all that. Now, so many ways to look at problems with the youth and all that. So this is a brand new year, perhaps another brand new pedestal for starting it differently. So from the angle of the youth, what do you think has been the issue with the youth in this country, vis-a-vis the need to improve the economy and all that?
Thank you very much. Relating to the youth, I think the major problem has been underemployment and empowerment. If you look at it, every society that wants to thrive, that wants to develop, always does this development on the basis of the strength of their youth, be it the military, be it the industrial complexes. It has always been a function of the capacity and the capability of the youths. No wonder the Bible says that, the strength is in the youth of a people. So what am I trying to say here? The major lapses our youths have had over the years has been empowerment issues. If you look at our country is, shaped in such that our leaders do not really give credence to the youths for development. Our leaders do not give the youths the ability to harness and express themselves. They still see the youths as persons, neophytes, who cannot really, take up the helms of affair. You see a situation where we're talking about a youth council and someone who is over 60 is heading it. It doesn't augur well. I think the youth should be given the pride of place in Nigeria as at today. The youth should be given the abilities to express themselves to the fullest. And I'm glad you mentioned that the president is looking at the youth confab this year, 2025. I'm just praying and hoping that it opens up all the gray areas that the youths have been facing, such as unemployment, such as underemployment, such as inability to really take up the helms of affairs, and then we can walk towards the right and positive direction.
Okay. All right. So let's, talk about some of the latest moves now, leaving the issues of the youth aside now. We've seen that some refineries are taking up for a very long time, perhaps for more than 2 decades now. Yes. That we are hearing that the Warri refinery has kicked off. Now, that's no doubt is so promising. Now, will all this in turn, do you think all this in turn will essentially improve the economy?
Of course it will. We've always known that one of the major aspects of Nigerian economy has been crude oil, and most times, even when we were taught in school, I would always wonder, why would Nigeria, so blessed with abundant crude oil, not have the capacity to refine her crude oil? It's like a woman who goes to the farm, farms cassava, and then sells it to another person who would now, finish up the processing to Gary, and the same farmer will go and buy from the person who has processed it to Gary. It doesn't make any sense. So I think this is actually a glimpse of hope, and it's a positive direction that our president has taken, because whether you like it or not, this is happening under his thought and leadership. And this is what we've always, clamored for. Nigeria, as the giant of Africa, is right to have lots and lots of refineries, both from individual, investors, and also from the national basis. And if indeed the Warri refinery has started working, like we are told, we want to see the ripple effect in the livelihood of the people. If you look at it most times, most of the purchasing powers of Nigerians in the last year gone, 2024, has dwindled simply because of the burden of high cost of transportation, which affects even the production processes and everything that revolves around, the livelihood of the people of Nigeria. So I think it's a right call in the right direction, and we want to see many of such feats being done in this new year so that the burden and the purchasing power of Nigerians can be empowered and increased.
Okay. Now, talking about the path towards economic recovery in the country, there are perhaps so many ways to look at it. Now, the issue of petroleum is probably, just one aspect of it. Now, outside petroleum, which, parts of the sectors would you want to advise the federal government to really concentrate on this time? That look, it seems that maybe the attention on petroleum has been so much. So let's tend to leave crude oil, petroleum, and all that. Let us leave aside and face this part of this sector of the economy. So, which sector would you want to suggest?
Thank you, sir. I think two major sectors come to mind. I want to start first from the education sector, because if people are empowered, they say human resources is actually the greatest of the resources in production processes. Because if one knows exactly how to do a thing, definitely you discover that it will do it smarter, better, cheaper, and quicker. Now, if you look at the Nigerian educational system, you will discover that the allocation in terms of budgetary allowances to the educational sector has dwindled. Over the week, I was in a place or a caption where ASU was threatening again to go on strike. If you look at the hurdles that students go through in acquiring this education, sometimes they do not even acquire the requisite education that can help them become employable after school. That's why we have a lot of underemployment. And I think our leaders should, begin to tend and move away from just the oil sector and begin to look at agriculture. Nigeria is well blessed. We have arable lands. We have a lot of, good weathers and so many indices that can help this country really become a food basket for the world, not just Nigeria. We were told a while ago that Malaysia came to Nigeria to pick up the seedlings for palm, oil production, and today they are doing so well. Now, if you look at it, if our leaders can begin to make agriculture more, more attractive by putting a lot of funds into agriculture, making it not just the small scale, making it the industrial complexes, encouraging people to go back to farming, I think it would also boost our economy and become a thriving area for us. I know a lot of persons will say one of the challenges that Nigerians have faced over the years when it talks about agriculture is security. This can work vis-a-vis. I understand that Nigeria's military is one of the best in Africa, and we've done a lot of peacekeeping. So if the will is there, if the determination is there by the leaders to say, oh, we want to turn the, the circumstance, the financial circumstance of Nigerians around, definitely nothing is impossible. But again, politicians would always tell you the reasons why they don't do most of these things is because they want to keep the people dependent on them, so that whenever election comes, they can always give them handouts and be able to carry their votes. And it doesn't really work well. So if we are true to ourselves and we want to really turn the tides around, educational sector, agricultural sector are two key areas that can help Nigeria surmount the issues with the oil sector.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about some of the steps that the present administration took, maybe last year now to see how the economy can be revived. I mean, floating the dollar, the exchange rates of the dollar against the naira, floating it and all that. Now, for some analysts, you are a business expert. For some analysts, the opinion is that, look, you can't float it. If you float it, you just let the price of naira always appreciating against, and price of dollar always appreciating against the naira. Now, should this administration continue with that policy?
Thank you very much. Firstly, floating the naira is not a bad idea from the economic sense.
Oh, really?
But you cannot be, yes, you cannot be floating when you are not at the, you are not in strength. How do I put it? Nigeria, it's more like a consumption economy rather than a production economy.
Okay.
And when you want to float your currency, you must have a lot that you are giving. You must be production inclined. Are you getting it? And that's why if you look at our foreign counterparts, the West, they tend to do a whole lot even when they float their currencies because they have the capacity to wedge those currencies. But here in Nigeria, we import almost everything. Even somebody joked at the time and said to the point that Nigerians even import toothpick that we can produce locally. So firstly, until we become a production economy, then floating our naira may just be not such a good idea from the economic sense. But it's not a bad policy as it were if truly Nigerians can get into production. Let's be self-dependent in terms of the things we produce. Let's begin to embrace made in Nigerian products and commodities. Let's begin to make things produced in Nigeria to be of more quality, cheaper, and then after which you can discover that floating our currencies will give us an edge rather than a disadvantage.
Okay, a while ago you talked about the need to improve on education in the country. As a matter of fact, you even made a recourse to the part of the yearly budget, even the 2025 budget now, we're still trying to look at it now. You were also trying to say that the part of the budget to education in Nigeria has always been not encouraging.
Yeah.
Now, education, do you think education, the kind of education that, it's part of what we do, the kind of education that we do have in Nigeria now, does it support productivity? Because it's more or less like a paper qualification, you know, whereas we are looking at education that is geared towards, that should be geared towards entrepreneurship, the way it is in other climes.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you're very correct because this is part of the things we have been saying as an educationist, that we need to revisit our curriculum. We need to bring it to speed with the current realities of today. Yes, education, they say, is the ticket for the next generations to make ends meet. But quality education it is, not just education. And quality education is such education that can solve problems. If you look at our institutions today, bedeviled with a whole lot of things, overpopulation, lack of equipment, you know, you're talking about entrepreneurship. Even the ones that are not geared towards entrepreneurship, a lot of them do not even have the materials to work with. The lecturers will tell you that they are handicapped. A lot of instruments that they need to be able to, prove to the students and teach them properly are not there. So it's all encompassing. It's not just about entrepreneurship. I can teach you about bead making, for instance. If I don't use the bead to teach you, how would you know? So if you look at our educational system, it's such that a lot of people put emphasis on paper qualification. And today, many industries do not actually employ individuals based on their qualification. They employ them based on their connection. And this has been a great issue. For instance, you see somebody who studied agriculture working in the banking sector. What has an agriculturist got to do with working in the bank? They'll tell you it doesn't matter. At least he's able to read and write and is able to compute and he has the requisite skills and all of that. So I feel it's time we go back to the drawing board and begin to look intrinsically how to change these things around, starting from the top to the bottom. And in doing this, there has to be a collaborative willpower from both the government, from the institutions themselves, from the lecturers, and then of course the students will definitely key in line because everybody wants the best for him or her child. And if you look at it, most of our politicians who come up with these policies, their kids are not in Nigeria. They do not school in Nigeria. They fly them abroad to some of the best schools in the world where they are brought to speed with the latest development and technology. But here in Nigeria, how many schools can boast of even 24 hours? Most of them, they do not even have what it takes to sustain it. If you go to the classes, you see even some students learning on a healthy environment. All these have a way of affecting the psychology of the child. The child just wants to live there and go get a job. Even some persons now are beginning to doubt the efficacy of their certificates, because you see someone who is graduated from school, done everything to train him or herself, and 10, 15 years, there are no jobs. How do you encourage such a person that education is actually the ticket to the future? Okay. So there has to be a paradigm shift. There has to be a change in our disposition towards making this country work. It's not about saying it. It has to be a collective will. We have to agree. We have to probably, maybe that's the importance that the confab would do. Nigerians need to come in and say, oh, let's make certain sacrifices. Let's be determined in making these things work. And I believe, by God's grace, if we can do this, we'll see Nigeria moving in the right direction.
Okay. All right, so the program is still this morning on ITV, and our talking points this morning is on the path to economic recovery in the country. You may call it a mixed box, or should it be the continuous stage of woes that, you know, most Nigerians have always, you know, mentioned, talking about the economy, or with the way things seems to be picking up, most especially towards the end of 2024. If it picks up that way into 2025, perhaps we may just be on the path of economic recovery. Now, we'll take a short pause now, and when we return, we're going to be looking at what seems to be, what has been controversial now, talking about the tax reform, you know, bill issue and all that. Now, for most people, it's a no-go area, most especially the northern governors. We understand that the Bauchi State governor now is almost rocking it out with the president on the issue and all that. So when we return, we see whether the much talked about tax reform bill issue, whether it will further improve Nigeria's economy. This will be right back. All right, the program is still right here this morning on ITV. Ogu Love is right here with us, and we are looking at towards economic recovery in the year 2025 in Nigeria. Now, Ogu, we have seen that the much talked about tax reform bill, but to, you know, a large extent, if that bill says through, and of course the content of it now is really meant to be, is being achieved and all that. We've seen that to an extent it really improved on our economy. But what is disturbing now is the fact that northern governors are not agreeing to the terms of the you know, tax reform bill. So if we have this situation, you know, we're talking about an entity now, Nigeria. Yes. We have a situation where that some are for and some are against. Yes. How then can we ensure economic recovery in 2025?
Thank you, sir. I think this is where some level of compromise will have to come in if truly we want the progress of Nigeria as an entity and not just sectoral or tribal developments. If you look at tax itself, it's not a bad idea. That's one of the major areas governments in power get funds to do a lot of things. But you and I would agree that there have been tax that has been in vogue since independence, but they are not commensurate. The revenue generated from such taxes are not commensurate with the developments we see on a daily basis.
The present day realization.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that, you know, asks the question or begs the question, why should we keep paying tax when it's not reflecting, rather than putting a burden on the people, you know, the poor in the society, as it were. Now, back to the question. If you look at the reasons the Northerners are using for rejecting...
The Northern governors.
Northern governors are using for rejecting the new tax reform bill, a lot of them is geared towards socialism, because in the North, the level of development is not as commensurate as that in the West and in the South. And if we were to go about implementing this new tax reform...
Why don't you say the level of social life now? Let us be mindful when they say development now.
Okay, there are indices for development. Some of those indices are human capital development, like we said before. If you take a statistics in Nigeria and check the amount of graduates churned out yearly from both the North and the South, they are not commensurate. That's why you have less developed, educationally developed states in Nigeria. It's still there in the curriculum, you know, from the administrations. So if it was at a par or at balance, there wouldn't be need for that. Then two, if you also look at it, most of the inclinations in the North is towards socialism rather than capitalism. They do more of welfare, more of, you know, this communal givings and all of that. And they feel if these tax reforms were to be implemented, it would not give their people the requisite benefit that they so desire. Because sometimes I tend to wonder when I'm arguing with my friends who are in the acts, you know, category, when they talk about federalism. True federalism is actually states taking responsibility for the resources that are produced within such states and paying a certain tribute to the center, which is the federal government, for running of essential arms and areas in the country. But then, if you look at what Nigeria is practicing, I wouldn't want to say we are really practicing federalism, because our common patrimony and our resources go to the center, and then the center now does a sharing formula based on the needs
of the states,
of the
constituent parts,
and the population from such states. And thereby you have certain states
based on the derivation principle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you look at that, you discover that some states that ideally may not form what you call a state cadre tend to benefit. And I think without missing words, this is where some of our northern brothers enjoy more than we at the West. So when you bring in the tax reforms, it's trying to now give credence to those who actually laying the golden eggs to benefit more.
Yeah.
And that is going to be to their own disadvantage.
Yeah, but don't you think that, because what seems to be playing out in this whole tax reform story is the fact that some states, I don't want to mention names now, but it appears that some states want to hide under, you know, others. I mean, whereas it's a free economic situation in Nigeria. I mean, back to school those days in our elementary economics, there's preference of productivity and all that. In other words, what you can produce more, you take advantage of that.
Definitely.
Now, if a state like Kano can produce more height and skin, so why don't they leverage on that?
I think it's still the Nigerian factor. Our politicians have really not come try to tell us that, look, we want Nigeria to move from the level it is to the level we want it to be. Everybody hide under the canopy that this is, especially the oil sector. Everybody just wants to focus on the oil. Nigeria is well blessed. Yeah. There are a lot of areas that our northern brothers can actually, you know, harness. You're talking about hides and skin. They have, those days, the granite pyramids.
Agriculture is
They
there.
have agriculture. Yeah. They even have minerals. There's gold in Nigeria. There's bauxite. There's a whole lot of minerals. Who is actually, is there an industry, I want to ask, who is taking records of those, just like we have in the oil sector? There is none. And I think this should actually be a waking up call for them to begin to look intrinsically, what can we contribute actually to Nigeria, and not what can we fake from Nigeria, as it were. You know, the tax reform as it is, it's a good development. But I also was talking to a friend from the North who said they are not totally against the tax reform, but they want it to be done in a manner that it will give them time to develop, to meet the developmental pace, you know, in the West and in the South. And if you look at it, we can do certain compromises. Nigerians can come to a compromise that's okay, this is actually the way to go. Let's begin these tax reforms in stages. It should not just come all at once.
Implemented.
Yes, the implementation should be in phases, such that it gives room for growth and development across all sectors and all boards. And in that way, it will not be seen as witch hunting. It will be seen as collective development of the Nigerian project. Definitely, if someone earns more, he's not perturbed in paying tax. But if I'm paying tax, and you are adding additional tax burden, and I'm not seeing the commensurate benefits in terms of development in my life and in that of my family, I may want to resist. I may not be interested in continuing in the paying of the tax. If I pay tax now, and I see we have good electricity, we have powers, you know, that can help small businesses thrive, We don't have incident shutdowns. We have good hospitals that can cater for lives. We have good roads that can make living, meaningful in Nigeria. I don't see a reason why everyone would not want to embrace it. Of course, more companies will come, and then definitely more persons will be empowered, and this whole, tax reform will become something that everyone will be proud of.
Okay. All right, so let's leave that now. Let's talk about the issue of power, because you see, the economy is a big house that carries almost all sectors. Now, power is so important to the growth and development of the Nigerian economy. Even all other nations of the world, power is key. Yeah. Now, we saw 2024 is one year that most Nigerians don't want to remember in terms of power, electricity, and all that. Now, if we take account, the national grid collapsed more than 30 times for just a single year of about 12 months. And for most people, that is not a good story at all. Now, for a country that is on the path of national recovery, I mean economic recovery, what do you think are the issues with power? What should the government do, with power in this country?
Firstly, I think the power sector should be overhauled generally. If you look at the privatization policies that Nigerians have done in the power sector, it begs the question, is it actually meant to enhance the efficiency of power, or it's meant to benefit certain cronies and empower them, If you look at it, power generation is not something that is rocket science. It's something that even any good electrical engineering student in the university can tell you it's possible. We have good weather, we can harness solar, but I think the restrictions should be removed. If you look at the way Nigerian is built, we all depend on
the national
grid.
Yeah.
There should be policies, intentional policies made to help or to give credence to investors who want to come in generating, because there are three phases. You have the generation, you have the transmission, and the distribution. Yeah. Some of the equipments we have were equipments that were installed since 1960. They are dated. There should be intentional drive to renovate these equipment. They are expensive, we know, but we should begin to look at how to build more of these structures and renovate the ones that we have. And then, of course, we should be able to ensure that those who actually consume these powers are accountable for them. If you look at Nigerian system today, you have the issue of prepaid and what's it called?
Estimated billing system. Yeah.
So the estimated billing system is such that should be done away with. We should meter every household. Let people pay for what they actually consume. And then, of course, you will see that Nigerians will begin to do the right thing. There should be general overhaul in the power sector if truly we want to move towards the path of economic recovery. Because without power, industries will not thrive. Without power, hospitals will not work. Without power, so many things will go wrong. Just if this government can focus on power and solving the issues around that power, definitely you will discover that Nigeria will truly be on its way to economic recovery. Some persons will say there's a whole lot of sabotage in the industry because of those who import generators and so many things. They wouldn't want their means of livelihood to be taken away from them. But this is where patriotism comes in. If we truly are patriotic Nigerians, this is the beginning of a new year, we can choose to be patriotic and say, no, we want to make Nigeria our dream country where we'll be proud. Anywhere in the world we go to, we can tell everybody, that's my country, that's my home. It has to be a collective effort across board, both from the government and the individuals themselves. You see, even in our communities, individuals going to steal cables, vandalize transformers and all of that, it begins to beg the question, these things that they are doing, is it really to their benefit, or don't they know the extent, the implications of what they're actually doing? So power generation is, or power as it were, is an area that we all have to call for an emergency. putting money there, putting the right individuals who know what they are doing, not putting in somebody at the helm of affair because it's my relative or is my friend, and he really doesn't have the necessary knowledge on how to deliver power to the people, you know. And then, of course, if we citizens can see this, then we can begin to work towards patriotism, to making Nigeria a better place to be.
Okay. All right. So we'll take another pause now. Yeah, we're going to be taking another pause so that we get you more seated for our discussion this morning. Don't forget the program is this morning on ITV, and we are looking at towards economic recovery for the year 2025 in Nigeria. A mixed box, you may want to call it, because so many ways, so many things that we can do, so many attempts that Nigeria as a nation can do, can make so that we can recover our economy. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. The program is still right here this morning on RTV. And our guest this morning, Loveday Ogu, a business expert and, of course, a public affairs analyst. We're looking at ways we can revive our economy in Nigeria for the year 2025. Now, Loveday, let's talk a little bit of bilateral relationship now. We saw Emmanuel Macron, the French president. Our president, he was in Nigeria, our president visited him and all that. Then what Nigeria stands to gain from that gesture now that you came to visit me, I came to visit you,
yes,
is the fact that France is willing to invest almost about 50 billion US dollars in agriculture in Nigeria. Then we also understand that in return, the French company is, telling Nigeria that, okay, you can, UBA, that's United Bank for Africa, can be in France.
Yes.
Then Zenith Bank can also be in France. All these are products of bilateral relationship between France and Nigeria. But the reactions by Nigerians is that, hey, let's be careful with all this now. Now, what do you make of it now? Should Nigeria continue with such a gesture?
Thank you very much. Bilateral agreements and relations are key things in international trade and international relations, and it fosters unity. No country is an island on its own. But then I think the reason why a lot of Nigerians are pessimistic about the agreement is because of the tendencies of the so-called developed countries on Africa, as it were. If you look at France as a country, France is a very good country. But then from the countries that France colonized, talking about Chad, Niger, Mali, Niger, a lot of the leaders are saying they're really not seeing the impact of France in their development over the years. And that has led to a lot of restiveness, and then a lot of them asking France to leave, even with her military bases and all, you know. And I want to relate it in this form. If a bad tenant is asked to leave by a landlord, and then another landlord is embracing that bad tenant, it begins to beg the question, are you getting it? So on its own, the relationship, bilateral agreements relationship, it's a good thing. But to what end? What are the hidden clauses that are unknown to you and I? Of course, everybody knows that agriculture, it's a money spinner, and it's the way to go. Yeah. We welcome them for that, gesture, that investment. Yeah. But then we also understand that Zenith Bank and UBA, it's now in France, which will make transactions easier for Nigerians. These are all laudable ideas. But very recently, our neighboring country was saying that Nigerians has agreed to cede a military base to France. We don't know how true that is. It's still speculative in nature. So I think it's more of how it's this bilateral agreement going to impact the common Nigerians. Are you getting it? For me, I'm hopeful if truly it's just economic in nature, without, hidden clauses, agenda regarding to the military base and all of that. And of course, the world now is beginning to be polarized with the issue happening in both Ukraine and Russia and the EUs and what have you. So we need to be cautious at this point in time. And we need to be certain that the interest of Nigeria is at the peak of all of these agreements. And of course, that's where patriotism comes in. And we hope our leaders will do the right to ensure that we do not mortgage the future of Nigerians and Nigeria, but rather we enter into bilateral agreements that will favor even our unborn children and the future of Nigeria.
Now, you talked about the military, Nigerian military and the French military and all that. Now, one thing that seems to have also militated against the economic growth of our country is insecurity. Now, if France is saying that, okay, come, let's do some give and take with your military, don't you think that will further strengthen the security architecture of this country and further improve on our economy?
To an extent, it can and it will, but is the willpower there? That's the thing. Is the willpower. If indeed I say I want to help you and I bring you on speed on what I do, teaching you and empowering you to make money rather than giving you stipends, then I have the economic will to want to help. But if I say I want to help you and you've complained that you are jobless, you are hungry, and all I do is just give you maybe 1,000 naira to live by the day, then I do not have the economic will to want to see you out of that misery. I think this is where it's important that we begin to look beyond the handouts, beyond the investment. What's the intention? Is it nobody will want you to be better than them? Nobody wants you to be as good as they are. Naturally, that's human psychology. But then at least there should be an economic will from a true friend. If I call you a friend, I should be able to see your interest as my interest. I should be able to see that my development does not hamper your development, but rather carries you along. So if it's coming from this direction, it's a welcome development. But if it's coming from the direction that, oh, I just want to take more from you and just give you a little, then it should be discouraged. In terms of our military, of course, we know a popular politician, I wouldn't want to call name, said, if insecurity persists more than a month, then the hand of politicians are involved. So if you look at all the insecurities happening here and there, whatever names, be it, Lakarowa, and what have you, if you go deeper, there is still some hands of certain politicians, or maybe not politicians, certain well-to-do individuals. Because how do you explain it? How did they get the arms?
Those are the allegations.
No, I'm just looking at the surface level.
Yeah.
It may not be politicians, but at least somebody that is well-to-do is backing and funding them. Ammunitions are not cheap. You cannot expect a hungry man who has not seen food to eat to be able to get, how do they even get the influence and the contact to getting these ammunitions and all of that? And if you look at the ammunitions they carry, it's comparable to what our militaries have. Yeah. There was a time, in the previous administration where we were asking, I think towards Jonathan's time, begging for certain arms to be sold to Nigeria so we could combat all of this insecurity. Was this arms sold to Nigeria? No, they were not. So if truly the intentions of our Western partners are genuine, which I hope it is, then it should be collaborative rather than one-sided.
All right, so still on bilateral relationship now. Now, one thing happened in 2024 when Niger, Chad, and I think about Mali and about two other countries now, they left the ECOWAS. Now, Nigeria, our president is the chairman of the ECOWAS. So these countries faced some economic sanctions. As a matter of fact, we're told that goods and services between Nigeria and Niger, stopped at that time. Yeah. To the extent that ordinary onion that you and I use in our food, a large part of it comes from Niger into the country. So because of that severe relationship, so onion stopped coming into the country, and that also impacted, those things that they stopped impacted economically, on Nigeria's economy. Yeah. Now, let's look at that now. Should we continue such kind of severe relationship? I mean, we understand that our president is the chairman of ECOWAS, and trying to bring member states of the bloc together. So if you don't want to be here, then you leave and all that. But it has effect on our economy. So exactly. Should we continue with that kind of posture, this year?
Thank you very much. When I was growing up, I was taught in government that Africa, it's Nigeria's centerpiece for foreign policy. Yeah. Are you getting it? It means that Nigerians actually look out for what affects and impacts the African brothers more before looking at the global hemisphere. Of course, we know, we've all come to terms with it that democracy has come to stay and is one of the best forms of government, unlike military regimes where you have authoritarianism and so many other factors. The issue with what happened in ECOWAS was a function of the change in government. Of course, the coup d'etat and all of that. But still, I think our African brothers should come to terms on why some of these things are actually happening, which begs the question. If this,
why the coup d'etat
exactly
are happening?
If the people if the people are happy, if there is development over the years that the Western partners and colonial masters had been with them, I wouldn't see such coup d'etats happening.
So that brings us to the mind again. Maybe the Nigerians that are disturbed by this newfound relationship between our president and Emmanuel Macron,
Exactly.
they may just be right.
Well, to an extent, but we can't judge here until we see it unfold. That's why I was a little cautious in my approach and said we hope that the intentions are genuine. Are you getting it? That probably France has learned this lesson that, look, you just don't take, you also give. And in giving, you try to help the betterment of that society so it can be felt. Let's go back to the issue of the tenant landlord issue that I mentioned ago. No landlord will want a very good tenant out of his house, who pays his rent, pays his bills, keeps the place okay and tidy. Even if such a tenant wants to leave, the landlord will be grieved. But for a bad tenant, the landlord will be so happy to just let him go. Are you getting it? So in our current dispensation and disposition, I think Nigerians should begin to look at what would benefit her more. Severing relationships with our African neighbors is to our detriment. Even if we feel we are affecting them, it should be such that it should be diplomatic. We should understand the reasons behind their grievances and their agitations, and also serve as a bigger brother, which we are to them, and then try to help stabilize the government of the day. Of course, military regime happened sometimes in the past in Nigeria, and we knew how it was in the society and the economy until we went back to democracy, which happens to be one of the best forms of government. So we can use our case study as an example to, guide them and encourage them for powers to be transmitted from the military to the civilian. But if we jettison them and throw away the bathwater alongside with the baby, there's no way we can help even our African brothers, develop or come to speed with our ideology, having in mind that Africa is the centerpiece of Nigerians' foreign policy, as we were told then. I don't know if it's still what's tenable right now. And that can help African brothers as well as Nigerians do better and live better.
Okay, let's quickly look at politics now. Now, are there aspects of our politics now that you think we should change? Because our political power really influences economic power too. I mean, as a matter of fact, political policies can affect, economic policies and all that. I mean, our governors, they introduce policies that affect economy and all that. So are there things in our politics that should be changed, so that we'll have a better economy this year?
Thank you, sir. If we want to be true to ourselves, I think a lot needs to be changed in our political hemisphere. Firstly, the umpire, the regulatory bodies must be forthright. It's what makes our Western partners, America in specific, to be great today, to be where they are, is because they've built strong institutions and not strong personalities. So if we decide to build our institutions such that a single person cannot just override the decisions of everybody, and the rules that we've stipulated amongst ourselves are allowed to work. If it's okay, we are using the Beavers machine should be used. Results should be transmitted. All of this adds to the credence of the electoral process and the acceptability by all. And then, of course, the will is then given to the people. The people now understand that we have the right to change. So if you are there, you will know you are accountable to the people. And if you don't do well, the people has what it takes to change you. It's only when we come to that realm that we can truly say we are towards the point of economic recovery and development. But where a politician can just come up and pay one godfather and settle the godfather, and the godfather just tells you, go and sleep, it's settled, we cannot move forward in that way. Because you will always see not the best hands come into play, but the best persons who have what it takes to settle those who are the power brokers and power makers of the society. Then another aspect we must look at in terms of our election is the fact that we should limit or discourage financial inducement on all electoral fronts. It should be such that political parties should lower the tuft in terms of the funding for purchasing of their interest forms, nomination forms.
Yeah.
Are you getting it?
Yeah.
Make it a level playing ground, looking at how vast Nigeria is. Then reduce the pay of our political masters. Reduce the pay. Let it be such that a civil servant earns almost at par without unnecessary allowances for politicians. It will discourage individuals who want to see politics, as a way of retirement and as a money bag. But rather you see people who are passionate, who are ready to work, who want to see development vie into politics.
Yeah.
Politicians should be individuals who have what it takes, have the interest of the people, and they should have shown it in leading for us to be able to vote them into power. But most importantly, if we really want to get it right, it must start from the umpire. Let the will of the people count. If the people want somebody who is bad, let it be that it was their decision. And they will know that, oh, we made this mistake, and then we have an avenue to correct it. And when it's time for the next election, it's just 4 years. 4 years is not forever. Definitely the people can still go back there and make a better decision. They will come to the terms and the realization that we are a product of the decisions we make. If we put the right persons there, life will be better for all. If you put the wrong persons there because of religious inclination, because of tribalism, because of nepotism, then we all will suffer the brunt.
Okay, so I want to say a very big thank you for joining us on the program
you,
today. All right, so the program this morning on ITV. Yeah, Loveday Ogu, a business expert and of course a public affairs analyst, talking about on the road to economic recovery in the year 2025. Now, it's a mixed box, just as we said, that there are many approaches that Nigeria as a nation can recover its economy with agriculturally, even bilateral relationship as far as it is genuine with the Western world and of course our neighboring countries. Then also the issue of the much talked about tax reform bill that is generating reactions and counter reactions. Let it not be a case of throwing the dirty baby with the dirty water. Bet the baby, throw the dirty water away, and of course let the baby be clean and bring the baby in, and will become a better nation for us. Then also we'll have other things we can look inward with in our country. Let it not be this whole attention on petroleum. I mean, agriculturally and other natural resources are also there. We can look into those, into those things, and our country and our economy will become a better one. I want to say thank you one more time, Loveday, for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir.